So I am Jen Wilshaw, for those of you who don't know me. I have my own business called Higher Fitness and Wellness that has been in practice now 28 years.
Mm.
And I've been teaching health, wellness, spreading the good news about it for 28 years. It is a joy and privilege to do so. And one of my greatest joys is teaching wellness classes at Westside, not just being part of the Wellness Wednesday community, but teaching the Safe on Your Feet classes at Westside that meet Tuesdays and Thursdays. So that's been absolutely fantastic. Um, and it's a joy to come to you with presentations that offer up what I really feel are valuable to all of us, all walks of life. And tonight's program is called Diets Demystified, and it's part one. And so why I put this program together, Liz and I chatted about it, and we wanted to be very precise about what this program would be about and what it's not about. And so why the program is taking place is that because diet overwhelm is very real. It's very real. There's overwhelm about what it means to eat well. For a season, carbohydrates are bad, and then they're good, and then they're bad again. In the 90s, we learned that fat makes you fat, eating fat makes you fat, and so we stopped eating it. Come to find out that we actually require fat for the body's vital functions, for absorbing fat-soluble vitamins, A, E, D, and K, and we require fat to sustain life. We're also launching this program because trying to make sense of what trendy diets say makes sense is real. It's a struggle. This program is also being launched because the frustration is very real from costly food and supplement programs that insist they pave the way to wellness and even to weight loss. We're launching this program because our desperation as a community, as people, as a nation, our desperation for truthful and sustainable ways to vital health and wellness is real. I see really good people trying hard and struggling desperately. And I'll share also what is very real about this program and why we are so excited to offer it to you. And that is that millions of people worldwide, men, women, teenagers, children, are in bondage to diets. They're in bondage to diets. They are enslaved to this 24/7 focus on food and carbohydrates and calories and fats and proteins and ketosis. Food obsession is very real. Food obsession is very real, and using food as a friend and a companion, as a source of comfort and stress relief, that is very real as well. So as we embark on this and deal with these real valid issues, I want to say that while I am neither a nutritionist nor a registered dietitian, I come before you tonight with 28 years experience in fitness, in wellness, and in nutrition. I continually pursue my education and my certification portfolio, not to impress, but to offer and to serve sound evidence-based data for getting well, for getting healthy and whole and getting well. I also bring to you a very personal history of disordered eating and disordered exercise habits. This includes anorexia, orthorexia, bulimia, and compulsive overeating. You see, some folks look at me when they meet me in class or the first time at their door if I'm coming for a private session, and they ask themselves, what could she possibly know about a weight loss struggle or about weight gain or about being enslaved to unrelenting bad habits and addictions? But I can say with surety that being enslaved to food is very real, and I know it well. And as with any other addiction cycle, it's hell on earth. It's hell on earth. By the grace of God, I have freedom from my tumultuous past. And so it's my call to remind you, in case you have forgotten, that hope exists for your health and your wellness. You deserve it. You're entitled to it. It's yours. It's a gift. God desires it for you, and you are worthy of it. And I want to help you tap into that. If you have been literally weighed down by food in any way, it doesn't have to be in the extreme way that I was weighed down and burdened. If you just want to get your glucose numbers under control, I make no promises about changing your weight. This is not about weight loss, but I do promise to offer you a responsible opportunity for a health shift as it pertains to food and diet, health and wellness. And I will do so with clarity and truth, science, and great compassion, hope, and love. So as we progress on in this, I'm going to share my screen with you. I hope this works well. Good. Okay. Can everyone see that? No? Hold on. Anything? So here we go. The first slide shows you much of what is out there, what we're all too familiar with. The array of options: keto, intermittent fasting, Mediterranean, low carbohydrate, high protein, lose 100 pounds in a year with low carb eating, why you're not losing weight. Vegan's the way to go. It's a lot of confusion, a lot of confusion. Why wouldn't we be confused, right? Regrettably, the diet industry, I should say the health, wellness, and diet industry, it is a $1 trillion industry. It's massive. It's massive. And there is this, regrettably, there's this tendency to perpetuate the confusion and overwhelm. I don't think it's all bad. I think that there are a lot of people out there trying to guide us in the right direction. But needless to say, it is overwhelming. It is overwhelming. And so the question often becomes then, what is the best diet? Is it vegan? Is it IF or intermittent fasting? Is it Mediterranean? Is it keto? And we are going to discuss, excuse me, we're going to discuss the 4 most prominent diets out there right now that are kind of circulating. And it is vegan, Mediterranean, keto, the paleo. Some people say paleo or paleo diet is very similar to keto. But these are the 4 we're going to hone in on: vegan and Mediterranean, keto, and intermittent fasting. And by the way, of course, the trial of any diet plan should be discussed with your physician. Just a bit of clearance there. Okay, so let's go to slide 5. And we're going to start with sugar, because many diets originate because of our overconsumption of sugar. It's a big deal, it's a big issue, and it's real. We desire sometimes eventually this New Year's resolution to get off sugar, right? Or sometimes there's a medical need that requires us to try to rectify our ways with sugar. And let's look at some of the studies showing sugar, and it is indeed addictive. Research demonstrates that sugar can stimulate the brain's reward processing center in a manner that mimics what we see with some recreational drugs. Sugar activates the opiate receptors in the brain and affects the reward center, which leads to compulsive behavior despite the negative consequences. Research on rats from Connecticut College has shown that Oreo cookies activate more neurons in the pleasure center of the rat's brains than cocaine does. It's that addictive. A 2008 Princeton study found that rats may become dependent on sugar, and that this dependency could be related to cravings, binging, and withdrawal. There's another study that I want to share with you. I don't have the documentation on it, but I learned it when I was pursuing some nutrition certifications. And this is a tough study to relay because it's not very, I'm not saying it's abusive, but you'll understand when you hear it. It's not the most gentle experimentation that took place. Basically, physicians and nutritionists took, I guess, toddlers, when they're crawling around, not infants, but toddlers. And they put about 15 toddlers in a large room, like a large playroom. And they wanted to know whether, in fact, sugar is something that creates an addictive response. So the experiment began by the nutritionist putting out wholesome food, kids' food, baby food, like wholesome food, peas and carrots and chicken, potato, sweet potato. And they scattered all of those options on plates throughout the room. And when those toddlers were observed, they crawled to the plate that pleased them. They ate a certain amount of that food and then just went away to play, to read, to lie down. And in other words, when they ate the non-sugar foods, enough was enough. There was this natural satiation and ability to shut off. Okay. When they removed throughout the perimeter of the room the plates of wholesome food, real food, and replaced that with sugary treats, Teddy Grahams, Oreos, sweet stuff, pudding, they found that the behavior of the toddlers changed entirely. They became more aggressive. They roamed around the room more frequently. They were possessive of that plate that occupied some kind of sweet treat. And they tended to eat it, crawl away, and then go right back. There wasn't any satisfaction. There wasn't a shut off. There was no satiation. And so, you can look at and say, well, is that an appropriate study? But therein it was done and lies evidence that helps us know that sugar is that potent, just as these studies suggest. It's that addictive. And you can take an assessment of your own tendencies. I mean, if you put a sleeve of Oreos in my cabinet, I'm sorry, I'm not going to eat one. I'm just not. I mean, it just won't happen. I know myself well enough, and I know what that does to me. So this is from where many of our diets originate, the need to get the desire and sometimes medical necessity to get our sugar intake under control. Let's go to our next slide. Some of these we are not looking at yet. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. So how much sugar, as per the American Heart Association, is safe and appropriate? There are specific amounts noted here, and that is not to get you into a measure and weigh mindset. It's just to let you understand. The American Heart Association says that the safe limit for women is 6 teaspoons of sugar. This is added sugar that you add to your diet. For men, 9 teaspoons, and for children, 3 to 6 teaspoons. Americans consume 22 teaspoons of added sugar every day. Every day. That is an average of, right there, see that white sugar? Of 17.5 teaspoons too much every day, or it's a third a cup. It's weighing out a third of a cup, taking that and put it in white sugar, and that's what we are consuming every day. That adds up to 11 cups. If you look at that bowl, 11 cups every month. Now, the deal is that our organs are not designed to process this much sugar. While this is common, it doesn't mean it's healthy, and we're not, our bodies, our beings are not designed for this. The organs that are hit hardest are the brain. You might recall that when we had our Wellness Wednesday series on brain health. And we talked about that, how high sugar diets are really affecting propensity for dementia and Alzheimer's. So the organs hit the hardest are the brain, and that will manifest itself as depression and dementia, anxiety too. The next organ hit hardest is the heart, and that will manifest itself as heart attacks and strokes. The liver is hit hard with fatty liver disease. The pancreas, no surprise there, is hit very hard, and that's manifested as type 2 diabetes. And the immune system is hit hard, our general immunity, and that will often manifest itself in forms of cancer. If you have had cancer, God forbid, or you know someone who's had cancer, or you've been involved in a cancer scenario, most really responsible oncologists will tell you, knock the sugar out, get rid of that sugar. Cancer cells love to feed off sugar. So while our organs take a blow, there is good news. When sugar is removed from the diet, your laboratory results, your blood profiles improve within weeks. Some of you may be able to attest to that. It happens quickly. A fasting blood panel will show those changes quite dramatically. And that is excellent news. It works. So, how do we get people off sugar? We're going to start with our first diet that we're going to highlight tonight, and that is the ketogenic diet or the keto diet. Okay, so as we look at the keto diet, before I get into the specifics, can you see that little pie chart? And you'll note that it depicts a diet that is very, very limited in carbohydrate. So it's low in carbohydrate, we would say. It's high in protein, but it's heavy in fats. There is that depiction, which is 100% accurate. Low carb, high protein, heavy laden fat. Okay, so what's going on with keto? Keto diet wants us to give up everything that's sweet and starchy. That includes cakes, candies, cookies, soda, juice, sweet tea, lemonade, pizza, pasta, rice, potatoes, corn, popcorn, chips, bread, sandwiches, crackers, most fruit, salad dressings, and even ketchup. The diet advocates our eating a lot of nuts. That's a good fat. Avocados, that's a good fat. Oils, it's a good fat unless it's coconut oil. Butter, ghee, which is like it's another kind of butter. It's a clarified butter, very common in Indian cuisine. And we also are encouraged to eat a modest amount of chicken, meat, pork, or fish. And we're allowed a few vegetables, a few fruits and vegetables, but not many because they've got carbs. And according to this program, carbs are not something that we want to be ingesting. So essentially, you have a very high fat, low carb eating plan. I will also say that the keto diet, not only is it high in fat, but it's high in what's called the bad fat. In next week's program, I'm going to teach you about what the good fats are, the good, the bad, and the ugly. For tonight, just know that this particular diet plan is very high in the bad fat, which is saturated. Saturated fat is considered a bad fat. Saturated fat is what increases cholesterol. And you can be on a vegan diet, eating all plant-based food and still be creating cholesterol because there's so much saturated fat in some of those food options, especially if there's a coconut derivative. All right. And we'll clarify again more of that next week. So that is keto. Now, as we move through, I have a lot of references here because there is so much to read on it. And I want you to know that the stuff that is just very simply and concisely outlined here is backed by science and reference. Keto diet reference, keto diet reference, keto diet reference. More keto diet reference. Okay. So slide 18. So what is the metabolic advantage? Because in going through this program tonight, outlining the diets that we are going to discuss is not about bashing them. It's not about bashing any program. Every program has something worthwhile to offer. And we're going to see the pros and cons of every single program and how do we take the best of what each of these diets has to offer and make it into a sustainable, livable lifestyle. So metabolic advantage, that is, what does this particular program do for your metabolism? Your metabolism is the number of calories that your body burns up. And that's how we lose weight. So if the program keto is followed perfectly, the reward is a metabolic state called ketosis. And that ketosis touts as your body's burning fat instead of carbohydrates for fuel. But the question is it really? So can your calories, the calories that we take in, be sneaked out of the body as ketones? Well, kinda. Acetone starts developing in the breath on a high protein, low carbohydrate diet. Acetone in the breath, and then ketones in your urine are released. So when you have acetone in the breath, you may have heard people who have been on the Atkins diet in the past, which is another high protein, high fat, low carb diet. Acetone gives you very, very offensive breath. It's acidic. It's acidic. Ketones in the urine, that is acidity in the body. It is not normal, and nor is it healthy for you to have ketones in your urine. Acidic diets like this also alter the pH of your blood, making your blood more acidic. And that is why when people go on a high protein, higher fat, lower carb diet, they will say, I have energy like I never had before. I don't need those carbohydrates. I feel amazing. I'm up in the morning and I can do, and it's a little bit, it's not entirely what you think it is. The pH of your blood has changed to a more acidic level, and it almost makes you kind of high. All right. So this is a very acidic diet. And what it adds up to, we think we have a metabolic advantage because we're wasting ketones and acetone in the breath. You know how many calories we're actually burning for the day that makes us think we're doing something really, really splendid? Oh, Kaz, please. 45 calories a day. We burn on this particular program 45 calories a day through the loss of ketones and acetone. It's, there's a sacrifice there, right? For 45 calories, the question becomes, do any of us want to put ourselves into metabolic states like ketosis, which again are not healthy? Okay. Remember to jot down questions as we go along. So, why do people lose weight on keto? Here's where it all comes to fruition. Oh gosh, sorry, gang. Okay, sorry. There is a hard stop to anything sugar on the keto diet, right? Remember, no cakes, no cookies, no candy, no ketchup, no bread, no rice, no potato, no sweet potatoes, no corn, no peas, nothing starchy, no bananas, no carrots. So you essentially, on this program, are stripping out entire food groups. And when you strip out entire food groups, calorie intake drops. That's the bottom line. See, when we're on a diet like this, we know something different is happening, right? But we don't just think, oh, my calories are just fewer than they normally would be. We think there's a magic in the food combinations that are taking place. But the bottom line is why people lose weight on something like keto or Atkins or the zone is that our calorie intake drops, and it drops to about 1,400 calories per day. That is severe calorie deficit. That's severe calorie deficit. And that is why people are losing weight. Most of the programs are going to have us hovering around. That's men, women, children, teens, around 1,200 or 1,400 calories a day. And the problem with that, well, number one, anyone's going to lose weight. But the problem with that is that we all have something called a resting metabolic rate, or an RMR. It's also known as a basal metabolic rate, or a BMR. When we are eating 1,400 calories a day or fewer, that damages our RMR, or our basal metabolic rate, or our resting metabolic rate. Because every single person has a resting metabolic need for way more than 1,400 calories a day. Let me make it really clear. What does this resting metabolic rate thing mean? Resting metabolic rate refers to the number of calories that your body and my body need at complete rest. Not sitting on the couch flipping the channels, not getting up occasionally to go to the bathroom. The number of calories that our bodies need at complete rest if, God forbid, we were in a coma. Our body uses calories to breathe. Yes, I'm sorry. I got a 9-month-old kitten here. To breathe, our body uses calories to change skin cells. It uses calories to make our nails, to grow hair, to repair muscle, to recover from illness, for our hearts to beat. That's a resting metabolic rate. And there is a specific formula, it's called the Harris-Benedict equation, that I use on people to determine their resting metabolic rate. There is not a soul on earth that I have ever met, regardless of age, size, or gender, who can sustain life on 1,400 calories a day. Their resting metabolic rates need way more than that. Now, if the resting metabolic rate needs more than 1,400 calories a day, what do you think our metabolisms need when we're up and about, right? And living a life, going to the food store, going to exercise class a couple times a week. So it's a drastic calorie drop that's creating the weight loss, not some magic in the elimination of foods and combination of foods. Yeah. And it's not very sustainable. I've tried it. It didn't work for me. Okay. So what are the pros and cons of keto? Remember, I said we're not going to bash everything. There is some positive. People get the dangers of sugars and starches out of their diet, not complex sugars and starches. I cannot advocate getting rid of potatoes and sweet potatoes and fresh fruit. No one has a weight problem or a diabetic problem because they're eating too many apples, maybe apple pie or apple muffins, right? But the pro is that diet, the keto diet, will help us reduce our overall sugar intake. It will serve as a natural appetite suppressant because it's altering the pH of your blood. It's acidic, and you're eating a high level of fat, which is calorically dense. It fills you up. And you're eating a high protein diet, which is also calorically dense. It fills you up fast. No. The other pro of the keto diet is that it will reduce your blood sugar. So it helps your glucose numbers, but it will not reduce your insulin resistance. That could be another presentation. I will simply say this. You can reduce your blood sugar numbers with a program like this. The only way to reduce your insulin resistance is with exercise, because you have to change how your muscle cells respond to insulin and glucose. Okay, what are the cons? It's a nutritionally deficient diet. Upwards of 17 nutrient deficiencies have been noted in keto. It is detrimental to your gut microbe, and it's detrimental because it's acidic. There's a flagrant use of processed meats, and that enhances or increases your colon cancer risk. And there's a lot of kidney stress because you're eating high protein, releasing all those ketones. You also will see people struggle with hair loss, brittle nails, and poor collagen production and aged skin, because muscle and protein are used for calories in a high protein, low carb diet. This is what confuses folks. High protein diets are really low protein diets. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. The protein that we're eating from these high protein diets, it's being ingested, but it is being converted or made into glucose because our brains and our hearts and our liver and other organs need, not kind of need glucose to survive. This is called gluconeogenesis, or the making of new sugar. Glucose, neo means new, genesis, the making of. Gluconeogenesis will kick in with any high protein, high fat, low carb program, or any just even low calorie program. You're not taking in enough, you're restricting your carbohydrate intake, and so your brain, that's the one that fires first. Your brain calls your liver and is like, what is happening? Where's my glucose? I need sugar to survive. And the liver says, well, this person's decided to give keto a go. I don't have anything for you. And so the brain says, you know, I can't live without it. Make some. Please make me some. And so it makes it in the process known as gluconeogenesis. So we make the body sugar, the brain sugar, by tapping into our muscle and our protein sources. So while we're on these high protein diets, they're really not, because we're losing all our protein to make sugar. Does that make sense? Right? No? Yes? Yes, but it's like, really? I know. So that's something to bear in mind. If you've ever been on one of these diets, flirted with it, I think we all have at some point. I know when Oprah Winfrey was on OptiFast, she used to talk about how she had really bad breath. And that again is coming from the ketones. It's coming from the ketones. So these are, they're trying programs. Let's look at what the diet got right. You gain control over sugar. So that's a plus. We have a sugar problem. We already have established that. We looked at the research, right? It helps us gain some control over sugar, but at a cost. Okay. That we won't go over yet. That we save. So that's keto. Let's now talk vegan. Now, vegan, there are a lot of categories of vegan, right? You can be a strict vegan, and that means no eggs, no dairy, no meat, no chicken, no fish. And then there are other categories, and that's not the basis of tonight, whereby some vegetarians eat egg and dairy, but they omit the beef or the chicken. So the bottom line is that a vegan diet for them, well, in all instances, is whole food based. You're eating real food. That's really good. And many vegan diets are plant-based. You're getting rid of and eliminating the animal product. So how does this kind of program fare? Because it's out there and it's advocated. It's advocated. Go vegan. Let's look at the pros and cons. So the pros of a vegan diet, first and foremost, it is nutrient rich. It's high fiber. It's good for the gut microbes and your GI tract. Very, very good and helpful. Studies confirm that a vegan diet can prevent, treat, and reverse 13 of the 14 leading causes of death. That includes heart attack, stroke, many cancers, diabetes, all of it ranks up there. A vegan diet can be excellent for weight loss because you're eating whole food, which means you're going to be in more of a state of regular, consistent satisfaction, and your sugar will be lower. It's also budget friendly and environmentally friendly. You're not, it's not a food plan. You're not paying for your meals. It's pretty wholesome that way. The cons that we tend to see with vegans will be most need to supplement vitamin B12. They can tend to fall short there. Those diets can also be marginal in calcium and iron, but again, supplementation is simple enough. A basic multivitamin will cover you. The other con is that sometimes it can be too restrictive for people, especially, let's say, if you're the vegan and you have a house of husbands and sons who love meat. So sometimes that's a challenge, but I also know a lot of people who deal with that quite well, and they just make the menu their own and give to their loved ones the meat and potatoes. So those are some of the cons that sometimes we come up against. What does vegan have going for it? Veggies. You veg it up. You're eating whole foods with a huge emphasis on plant, and you are going to get high fiber, low sugar, a balanced diet, and I think I said it all. High fiber, low sugar, balanced diet. And you'll be satiated. You'll be satiated. Okay, so that is vegan for in terms of what we're going to talk about tonight. We're not going to go into some of these other stories. Okay. So we've talked keto, pros and cons, vegan, pros and cons. Here's the Mediterranean diet. I'm a big fan of this one. And for the 5th consecutive year, the Mediterranean diet ranks as the #1 best overall diet by US News and World Report and by many, many nutritionists and dietitians. I favor this diet because the 4 rules that responsible nutritionists, dietitians, and physicians advocate this diet encourages. There are 4 rules, my friends, and this is not on a slide, so if you want to write these down. These are 4 rules that I remember learning when I was getting well that will never change, regardless of the time of year it is, regardless of whatever we're trending. There are 4 nutrition rules that will never change and that most dietitians and nutritionists and physicians can agree upon. And that is to eat a balanced diet that's low in fat, specifically saturated fat and trans fats. Eat a balanced diet that's low in fat, that's low in sugar, and high in fiber. I'll say it again. So we want to eat a balanced diet that's low in fat, low in sugar, and high in fiber. Those 4 rules will always stand true. And the Mediterranean diet acknowledges that, with vegetables, whole grains, olive oil, beans, fish. There can be chicken. It's not just fish, right? You have whole grains, whole real foods, sweet potatoes, rice. So we're not eliminating whole food groups here. Mediterranean pros and cons. Pros, much like vegan, it is nutrient rich. It's high in fiber. You can still enjoy meat and carbs, just both smartly and in moderation. A Mediterranean diet, because it's so natural and whole, is also budget friendly, environmentally friendly. Some of the cons that come up, you have to learn to shop for more produce and learn how to cook it. That's not such a big deal. We must learn to eat fewer processed foods and fried foods, more olive oil, nuts, and intact grains like quinoa, barley. We learn to choose fish, other seafood, or lean chicken more than we choose hamburgers and fries. And then underneath it says, wait, maybe those are all pros. And I believe they are. It's a very doable plan. It's a plan you can find in any restaurant. So what the Mediterranean diet got right, much like vegan, you're eating real food. You're not living on packaged processed foods. It's real food, a real food diet. And still the #1 diet. Okay, let's get rid of that. Ooh. All right, now we're going to touch on IF, or intermittent fasting. So we've gone to keto, to vegan, to Mediterranean, and now on to intermittent fasting. Let me just say that with intermittent fasting, we're going to talk about it. This is probably not very wise for anyone who struggles with diabetes. Bottom line, speak with your doctor. Always get clearance from your doctor before embarking on a new journey with your nutrition. So in a nutshell, what is intermittent fasting? There's a hard stop line in the sand from eating. So we limit a person's eating time. You say, okay, I have this amount of time to eat, and then I don't eat for several hours, which at the end of the day, much like keto, successfully decreases your overall calories. Okay, so it is calorie restrictive. It is calorie restrictive. There are other health benefits to intermittent fasting. It does reset the digestive enzymes and insulin. It allows for a more efficient digestive system. It allows for a more alkaline blood pH and a more alkaline GI, gut microbe. Autophagy, that's a big word that simply means cellular cleaning. Autophagy is what we want to happen with cancer, something like cancer when there's uncontrolled cell division. Autophagy reabsorbs the sickly cells, the cells that have gone astray. There is no question that fasting does that. Fasting has been proven over and over and again in a lot of cancer research that autophagy takes place. We reabsorb, the body's immune system kicks in and gets rid of those sickly cells. And the final thing that this does too, any kind of fasting, intermittent or not, it will improve your mitochondrial function. And if you remember from biology class, your mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Every cell in our body, and we have trillions of cells, has a powerhouse, a center, and that's the mitochondria. And we depend upon that for energy. Okay. So that's intermittent fasting. Now, with IF, or intermittent fasting, is more always better? There are some guidelines around IF, and that is some proponents suggest, and it depends on who you read. Some proponents suggest OMAD, which is 1 meal a day or 2 meals a day. OMAD, 1 meal a day or 2 meals a day. That's one way to go about it. Another is fasting for 16 consecutive hours. Again, you got to speak with your doctor, and this probably is not advisable for anybody with diabetes. This is not easy to do. I've made Sundays into a fasting day, and it's something I had to work on because of my history with eating disorders. I didn't want to kick up a problem again, but I am interested not in deriving any weight loss from fasting. I'm interested in the resetting of digestive enzymes and reabsorbing sickly cells. It's really for immune function, but it's not easy. And there are ways you can, tonight's not the way to go into it because it's not the time to go into it because it's not about just getting proficient at intermittent fasting, but there are many ways. The 1 meal a day, you can do 2 mini meals a day, or you can fast 16 consecutive hours. But your daily antioxidant and fiber requirements are very, very difficult to meet. You're going to be lacking in nutrients, which makes sense. It's a fast. So more is not always better. Now, what did the diet get right? That is intermittent fasting. Lots of literature is out there and research that says a 12-hour gut rest is amazingly good for the body, for the immune system, to reset digestive enzymes, to reset insulin, and for that cellular cleansing, autophagy. The thing about this is that when we get into next week's habits that I'm going to offer you, a 12-hour gut reset is ideally what most of us can be doing and should be doing with our sleep. And I know there are many people who say, I don't get 12 hours of sleep, but you're going to learn next week that there is a point in our day that we shut off the eating. The kitchen closes to support our metabolic function. And that is also meant to support the health of our guts, to stop the late night eating, go to bed, and let everything reset. And these 12-hour gut resets are really, really beneficial. Right? Let me make sure I went through all my slides. Yep, I'm stopping there for tonight. Okay, so let's pull all this together. Except for the Mediterranean diet, all the programs discussed tonight, intermittent fasting, vegan, and keto, put the individual in some calorie deficit, especially the fasting and the keto. Remember, it's a caloric deficit on those programs of at least 12 to 1400 calories a day. In other words, I'm sorry, let me take that back. You're consuming 12 to 1400 calories a day to lose weight. That's the big secret in it all. That's the big secret in all of it. So while all these programs look different to you and sound different and look different on paper and writing in a digital format, have different rules, they are all using the same strategy. They're putting you in calorie deficit. And they're not going to tell you that because nobody wants to be told that they have to count their calories. It would be easier just to say to people, stop eating at a certain time, do some fasting, and eliminate whole food groups, because those are ways to just get rid of a bunch of calories by the end of the day, right? And by the way, I'm not advocating calorie counting either. We need freedom from that. We need freedom from that. But that's the big secret. So if I format menus for individuals or diet plans, to them, it all looks different. It's like, ooh, wow, that diet's interesting and that diet is interesting, but it's the same at the end of the day. It's the same magic, calorie deficit. And so when people say calories don't count, I have to respectfully say, I disagree with you. It's a science thing, gang. It's a science. Calories are units of heat that are meant to elevate like 1 gram of water to 1 degree Celsius. That's the scientific definition. Okay. Calories count. At the end of the day, it's like balancing a checkbook. Calories in, calories out. If you consume more calories than you expend, you gain weight. If everything is equal on the in and the out, you maintain weight. If you end your day in calorie deficit, burning more calories than you ingested, you lose weight. That's what it is. And the question is, how do we do that without being obsessive? How do we do that without being obsessive? That's the science, that's the formula, that's the equation, calorie deficit. And how do we make that sustainable and livable so that we experience freedom? Understand one more thing when it comes to the weight loss in these programs. Because the majority of them, and even the other programs not mentioned here tonight, there are lots of other programs. They're putting you in calorie deficit. It just sounds different. The rules sound different. The ways are different. It's calorie deficit. And the only problem I have with that is it's not sustainable. At this point in my life, having kind of been down the road I've been personally and with my eating disorders and professionally watching others struggle, I don't deem these programs particularly responsible and sustainable. Not when you're in severe calorie deficit. And here's what happens when you lose weight on one of these programs. 1/3 of the weight that you lose will be water. No question about it. And that happens because you've taken the carbohydrates out. When we eat a gram of carbohydrate, we store 3 to 4 grams of water with it. So if you eat a gram, and think of the number of grams of carbs, we can eat. 1 gram of carbohydrate will store in your body 3 to 4 grams of water. So obviously, if you strip out carbohydrate, you're going to lose a bunch of water. And you get a certain look, right? Kind of that drawn in look, sucked in look, dehydrated look. So 1/3 of your weight loss is water. 1/3 of your weight loss will be muscle and bone. Muscle and bone. And we talked earlier about the fact that our metabolisms are based on muscle. I always remember this, and I say to folks, muscle is your metabolism. There is no diet on planet Earth that's going to cure your slow metabolism. It will tout it. It will tout it. It will say it. And I promise you it won't happen. And I say that with love. That's not the way it works. There isn't a diet that can change your metabolism. Even if it's labeled, this is the diet that changes your metabolism. It doesn't work. The only thing that alters metabolism is the ratio of fat to muscle on your body. And if you want more muscle, you must move and exercise. That's your metabolism.
Okay. Do we have time for some questions?
Oh, and finally, one more. So it's 1/3 water weight, 1/3 of muscle tissue and bone, and the last third will be some fat.
Oh, so I know you have more for next week, but I do want to, there's a couple of great questions here that I was hoping if you want to stop the screen share, let's see. Can I do that or you do?
I can do that.
Okay. So some great questions. I mean, so much great information, but Brian's asking, what about combining the Mediterranean diet with a 13-hour gut rest between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m.? So
like combining the best of each diet, right?
yeah, so you're eating this whole grain, whole, diet with lots of different things, whole foods, and then yeah, so that sounds good. That
sounds good. And as long as, did you say Brian?
Yep, Brian
Right.
Hans. Yeah.
Oh, hey Brian. As long as you have cleared it with your doctor and that fasting is appropriate for you. Yeah, it sounds good.
So you referenced when you referenced added sugar, did you mean in the form of literally adding sugar? Does this also include the verbiage on the nutrition label where it says
Added sugar?
Is that what you meant?
Yeah, both. What
Both.
sugar you add. So if you put sugar in your coffee, and then added sugar. So if you flip over a label, you'll see total carbohydrate and added sugars.
And you're suggesting it might be best to avoid eating foods that say they have a lot of added sugar in it, in addition to what we can control.
That's right. Next week, I'm going to give you the rule.
Oh, okay. So this is a question Tim is asking, and I also wondered it myself. I heard a couple of times you say that coconut oil wasn't good, and he's saying what's bad about organic coconut oil and or coconut milk?
So anytime there's a coconut, it's saturated. It's saturated fat.
Even just straight out of the coconut.
Straight out of it.
Saturated. Okay.
Yep. Saturate. It's highly, highly saturated. I love coconuts too. And there are things that I eat, like granolas out there, really wholesome ones, gluten-free. There'll be some coconut oil. And if you look at the label, look where it says fat and look where it says saturated fat. It tends to be loaded.
And that's the same with like coconut milk that you would cook with or use, the cans.
I'm not sure about the coconut milk. You'd have to look into that.
Yeah.
But look at the label of with coconut, and especially with oil and heat, it becomes saturated.
Okay, so you want us to avoid the saturated fats.
Yeah, next week you're going to learn the good fats are unsaturated, the bad fats are saturated, and the really ugly bad fats are trans.
Oh.
So anything coconut derivative, anything that has coconut in it, look on any label, there will be saturated fat in it, and you got to watch that. Saturated fat is what clogs the arteries.
Oh dear, I like coconut.
Saturated fat is what increases your cholesterol, and that's an example, right? Of, well, I'm on a vegan diet. Why is my cholesterol through the roof? Look at a lot of foods on vegan. There's a lot of coconut derivative. And the more saturated fat we eat, the more cholesterol we produce. End of story. The more saturated fat we eat, the more cholesterol we produce. But I don't want to offend with the coconut thing. You can look into that and see whether it suits you, if that's appropriate. But coconut is saturated.
I'm offended. No, no, I just happen to like the flavor of coconut. So, but it's good to
All
know.
right.
I'm going to take a look. And Deborah's saying that, yes, she noticed that her daughter who's diabetic, if she cuts carbs on her insulin, her blood sugar will crash. So you have to, this is all really, really important to balance.
It
Yes.
is. It is.
So would you say overall the name of the game is balance?
So at the end of the day, when we kind of dissect diets, we note that there are pros and cons to everything. It's not all doom and gloom, and it's not all like drastically irresponsible. The 4 rules we want to adhere to: eating a balanced diet. And a balanced diet means having an array of foods. We're not stripping out whole food groups. Okay. In every food group, talk old school, there are healthier options and the not so healthier options. I'm not advocating, eating sweet cereal and living on white bagels. That's a problem. But starchy carbohydrate like potato, sweet potato, carrots, and that's actually kind of what they call a high sugar vegetable. Carrots, corn. These are natural whole foods, God-made foods. They're not creating the problem. So we want a balanced diet that's low in saturated fat and trans fats, and those are all on labels. That's a balanced diet that's low in sugar and high in fiber.
Okay. Well, on that note, friends, we are going to stop here. Thank you, Jen, for just a lot of great information. And we're going to return next week. She's going to give us, it's 8 tips for kind of really how to navigate this.
Yeah, so next week we take what we've learned tonight. How do we take all the pros, the good stuff, and make it into a livable, sustainable lifestyle? 8 habits.
8 habits. Can't wait. Thank you so much, friends. It's good to see you. Good to be together. And we hope to see you next week for part 2.
Yes, thank you.
And as you go from this space and out into your week, we pray that you be well.
Yes. Amen.
Thanks, Jen.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Carla.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liz and Jen.
I'm glad, Alice, I'm glad you got on.
Yeah, I appreciate the help. It didn't work at first.
Yeah, yeah. Well, same link next week, but we'll send out another invitation. No worries. Okay.
Love you, Jen.
All right. Grace
Love
and
you.
peace. Good. Ooh, Pat. Hi, Pat. Okay. Logging off.
Logging off.
Bye.
Bye.